IBM didn't lose the future because it lacked information. It lost it because it refused to believe what it already knew. In the early 1980s, IBM was the most powerful technology company on Earth. Not just successful, not just dominant, it was the definition of computing itself. Governments trusted it. Banks depended on it. Corporations built their entire digital worlds around its machines. And yet, inside IBM, something strange was happening. The future was knocking on the door, and the people in charge were walking past it. IBM wasn't born as a software company. It was born as a machine company. For decades, its power came from things you could touch. Mainframes the size of rooms, hardware that required buildings, contracts, and long-term dependency. IBM didn't just sell computers, it sold infrastructure, and infrastructure creates a specific kind of thinking. At IBM, value wasn't measured in lines of code. It was measured in weight, in metal, in physical presence. The bigger the machine, the bigger the deal. Software in this world wasn't a product. It was a feature, something that made the real product, the hardware, more useful. Not something that could ever become the center of power. Inside IBM, operating systems were treated like electricity. Important, necessary, but invisible. You didn't build an empire around the power grid. You built it around the factories. So when the personal computer started to emerge, IBM approached it the same way. The PC wasn't seen as a new kind of power. It was seen as a small machine for small problems. Something for hobbyists, offices, individuals. Not something that could ever challenge the gravity of mainframes, enterprise contracts, and global infrastructure deals. And because of that, software inside IBM never became a center of gravity. It became a service department. Here's the moment that never appears in history books. There was no dramatic boardroom scene where someone stood up and said, "Software will rule the world." Because inside IBM, that sentence didn't even make sense. Executives were trained to think in terms of supply chains, manufacturing cycles, physical distribution. Code didn't fit into those mental models. You couldn't warehouse it. You couldn't ship it on a truck. You couldn't lock a customer into a 10-year service contract with it. So even when engineers inside IBM understood the technical importance of operating systems, the culture couldn't translate that into power. Knowledge existed. Belief did not. At IBM, careers were built on hardware success. Promotions came from managing big deals, big factories, big enterprise accounts. No one rose to the top by making software more elegant. So the organization learned, quietly, subtly, what mattered. If you wanted influence, you didn't go into code. You went into machines, and that created a feedback loop. Software stayed invisible because powerful people didn't come from software. And powerful people didn't come from software because software stayed invisible. By the time the PC exploded across the world, IBM's internal ladder had already decided who would never sit at the top. To IBM, the personal computer didn't look like a revolution. It looked like a toy, small screen, cheap components, no massive contracts, no long-term lock-in. Everything that made the PC powerful to the world made it unimportant inside IBM. Because IBM didn't measure power by reach, it measured power by control, and the PC, by design, was uncontrollable. Anyone could build one. Anyone could modify one. Anyone could copy one. To a company raised on closed systems and vertical integration, this didn't look like the future. It looked like chaos. This is where the culture made its quietest, most expensive decision. IBM treated the operating system as something that passed through the company. Not something it owned, not something it built its identity around, just something that made the hardware sell. The machine was the hero. The software was the sidekick. And in every organization, heroes get protected. Sidekicks get outsourced. There was no press release that said, "Power is leaving the hardware." No headline that said, "Control now lives in code." It happened silently. With every PC sold, with every clone built, with every company that realized they didn't need IBM, they just needed something that could run the same software. The center of gravity was moving, not from company to company, but from machines to platforms. And IBM's culture wasn't designed to see platforms as power. This is the real tragedy. IBM wasn't stupid. It wasn't blind. It wasn't slow. It had brilliant engineers, deep research labs, internal reports that mapped out the rise of personal computing in detail. But culture is a filter, and through IBM's filter, software always looked like a supporting actor, never the star of the story. So even when the future was visible, it didn't look important. Big systems don't fail because they collapse. They fail because they can't pivot. IBM was optimized for stability, for reliability, for control, but the software world was optimized for speed, for copying, for scale. By the time IBM realized that control had moved into code, the rules of the game had already changed, and the company that once defined computing was now playing inside a system it didn't design. IBM didn't hand power to another company, it left a door open. And the next episode is about what happened when everyone walked through it. Because once software became the center of gravity, no single company could own the machine anymore, only the ecosystem. IBM thought it lost control to one company, but what happened next was far bigger than that.